Just before the most recent Democratic debate, which many people didn't even hear about and weren't home to see since it was right in the middle of a holiday long weekend for Martin Luther King Day, Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders unveiled his plan for universal health care, sort of Medicare rather, expansion for all. The obvious questions: how would it work? And what would it cost? According to Sanders' plan, individuals would pay a 2.2% premium. And that term premium is the source of much controversy. Employers would pay a 6.2% payroll tax to fund the health care plan. And then there would be some additional taxes on those earning, for example, between a quarter and $500,000 a year. The top marginal tax rate for them would go to 37%. And those making over $10 million per year would pay a 52% marginal tax rate. Now, what does former Secretary of Labor Robert Reich think about this plan? Well, let's take a look. He says Bernie's plan isn't nearly as radical as it will be portrayed. It builds on the strengths of Medicare. Like Medicare, it's universal, separating health insurance from employment and enabling people to choose a healthcare provider without worrying about whether that provider is in network. All they'd need to do is go to the doctor, show their insurance card. No more copays, no more deductibles, and no more fighting with insurance companies when they fail to pay for charges. Through a single national insurance system, we'll no longer be paying for the marketing and advertising of for-profit health insurers, nor their giant executive salaries or their complex billing systems. Government will negotiate fair prices with drug companies, hospitals, and medical suppliers. I've looked at the savings and the costs in Bernie's plan, and it will work. The United States currently spends $3 trillion a year on healthcare, nearly $10,000 per person. Bernie's plan will save American families and businesses over $6 trillion over the next decade. The typical middle-class family will save over $5,000 a year. The typical business will save over $10,000 a year. The costs will be less than the savings. So this should not be controversial, okay? And where it got controversial, Lewis, was, is Bernie Sanders raising taxes? And the complex thing is, yes, he is raising taxes in some specific ways. However, for the average family, if you consider a tax increase and the savings, it is a net savings. That's what we should really be focusing on. The are you raising taxes or aren't you raising taxes has become this sort of talking point, buzzword thing. But if the overall cost goes down, that's what we should really be concerned about. And it does appear to with this plan.
Yeah, well, nobody cares about that, do
Right.
they? Because they say, how much am I paying now? What do I get now? What about now? That's how our entire outlook, that's what it's based on. It's there's no vision. There's no long-term, there's no long-term vision in anything. It's about instant gratification.
Right.
And it's about right now.
Even from the point of view of the businesses, there are still savings. If you're a business and you can say, okay, right now I pay whatever it is per month for my 300 employees that I have. If you were to say, eliminate everything that you're currently paying towards health insurance and instead pay a 6.2% payroll tax, according to the experts who have done the math, this will save businesses money as well. And some people will say, well, it's just not doable. The system won't be viable because it just doesn't make sense for a country our size. Okay, well, yeah, the United States is a big country, but there are big countries at our level of development that are doing this, and there's no reason that the United States, only by virtue of being bigger, couldn't do this, Lewis. And that's the reality we need to understand. This should not be controversial.
It's a really simple system, and it scales perfectly well. There are no worries about that. But people will throw around the term socialist, communist, whatever, and paint this in a very ugly way when in reality it would help everybody across the board.
And we're going to talk about that element, the socialist element of it, a little bit later.